the prelims session for environment, the first theme that we picked up is environmental governance. Okay. And in environmental governance, we were looking at the various UN conventions and the corresponding information. And I've asked you to make short notes. So just like the previous class, even now you will be quickly going through that information and just like a quick revision for 5 minutes, and then we will logically take that forward to the next theme. Okay. So for any environmental governance related questions, like we discussed, it will fall under 5 different themes. Either the question will be about the global level agreements, conventions, or any global level meetings that countries come together and they decide on a common agenda. That is the most basic approach for creating a governance architecture to solve the problem of environment. Then those specific international organizations will create some legalized formats to approach the problem that we are dealing. For example, UNFCCC has this architecture of COP, Conference of Parties, just as an example. Then to make that agenda a reality, we will need money, and there will be a question on the financing architecture. Then just government money is not going to help. We will need more than government money. Any market driven mechanisms and any metrics to support the markets. Let's say when a private player wants to invest money in a environmental friendly technology or anything that is related to this cause of climate, they would want to see how exactly is that market player functioning, so that if I see some profit, I will invest. So you need some metrics. So you will get questions on the metrics also. Just by looking at the question's language, you will be able to mark the answer. Finally, if there is any innovative solution or any new technology that will try to address the climate problem, that will also be a possible question. And finally, any awareness campaigns by any NGOs or global level bodies, they will also be a part of our question architecture. So these are the broad categories of questions in this theme of environmental governance that you will be getting. We discussed this. So we proceeded and saw the various steps and the previous year questions that were asked. Okay, then we saw the Rio conventions, UNFCCC, UNCBD and UNCCD. The various prelims pointers were discussed. We discussed about the difference between UNFCCC approach and UNCBD approach. Here we were seeing why they were not legally binding. Here we are seeing why they are legally binding. Here it requires the governments to change the way they are financing their economy, the way they are running the economy. The economy is largely built upon a conventional fossil fuel led economy, and that's not easy to change overnight. So all the stakeholders in that particular economy have no incentive to reduce the climatic, the greenhouse gas emissions, and the corresponding impact on climate is continuing. It's actually getting worse and worse. In this context, IPCC, the reports of IPCC are also important. So this is not legally binding. This is legally binding because we talk about fair benefit sharing of genetic resources. And then we saw how UNCCD is all about desertification. We saw the differences between them and the corresponding agreements too. UNFCCC as such is not a binding convention. The agreements under it were binding, and only what is binding? Mandatory reporting, not achieving the target. We have discussed that already. Okay. Then we saw the Paris climate deal. In the Paris climate deal, we saw how NDCs were in the picture. The difference between a UNFCCC broad convention and a particular agreement, those two are separate. UNFCCC as such is not binding. The agreements that came under UNFCCC, they can be binding if the countries agree. So in the case of Paris climate deal, what is binding? Let's say we all agree, we are all different countries. So the agreement made, whatever commitment you are giving, that commitment should be reported. Only that part is binding. So that some element of accountability is there. If you commit something, let's say for example, India says, I will achieve so and so target. Paris climate deal is not holding you accountable for not reaching the target. Targets are not binding. Only reporting is binding. And Paris climate deal is entirely voluntary in nature. So please look out for this. Just caveat, okay? Just don't get confused. I hope your doubt is addressed now. Then under the Paris climate deal, there is an article 6 which talks about the methodology of financing. Okay. So wherever money is involved, whether it is the market mechanism or the government bodies coming together, there are various ways in which you can mobilize finance. So article 6 discusses these various mechanisms for mobilizing the finance. One of them being ITMOs, that is internationally transferred mitigation outcomes. So this will look like carbon credit, but it's not exactly carbon credit in the sense that see, for example, look at this point. Both countries adjust their national emission accounts via corresponding adjustments to avoid double counting. There is one more problem that I did not discuss the day before, double counting. What is this double counting? Let's say, for example, if two parties are involved, let's say Japan and India are involved, and Japan says that through my investment into India in some project which is reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, I am contributing to the NDCs in this way. Not directly, but by investing in that company or by buying some carbon credits. So essentially, if you take a look at it, same activity is helping both the countries. But if both the countries count it twice, actually the global target should be reduced, right? It's not happening otherwise. Because it's an accounting, jugaad. That's supposed to be avoided. This was a problem which occurred in Kyoto Protocol. And that is the reason, if you take a look at the question in 2014 mains. In 2014 mains, there was a question which says that carbon credits have seen a drastic fall. For example, if I remember, if one carbon credit was trading around 25 to 30 euros, by the time it is 2013, that carbon credit worth is less than 1 euro. It became virtually worthless because this double counting problem was there. To overcome that, Article 6.2 spoke about this when we were dealing with ITMOs. Another mechanism is Sustainable Development Mechanism. What is Sustainable Development Mechanism? Any idea? We discussed this already. What is the exact difference here from Kyoto Protocol to this? Exactly. We here in the clean development mechanism of Kyoto Protocol, we were not really focusing on global level net decrease. Here there is a net decrease. Okay. Yeah, same thing. But official name is this one. That is more. This one. Okay, my bad. Let me go back and check. If maybe I'm wrong, I'll go back and correct. 6.8 article, this talks about the non-market approaches. 2025 prelims question was asked on this. Do we have only government driven mechanism or only market driven mechanism? No, it's a combination of both, because look at the overall logic. Overall logic is that we need as much money as we can. What is the point in restricting money inflow? We can take it from the market, from the government, from philanthropy, anywhere, because we are in dire need of money to address this problem of climate change. Okay, so this is the non-market approach that we discussed. Then we discussed about CBD and the respective traps that we should be wary of. For this year, it may not be that important, but again, I can be wrong. This is a static topic. It is not much in news, so I'm not focusing again much here. We already discussed that other day. So I hope your notes is good enough to revise this. Then we spoke about sites, 50 years of sites, and we spoke about the corresponding initiatives like Mike, which is a initiative related to elephants. Okay, wild elephants and also tamed elephants is in news with respect to Wildlife Amendment Act. So Sites and Wildlife Amendment Act, we're talking about this, and also this is a previous year question. So it is important to go back to the respective initiative and have a look at it again. Then we were speaking about UNCCD, desertification. Just clarification, when I said this is the only binding agreement or instrument focused entirely on land degradation, here we are talking about something that links both the climate change aspect as well as the biodiversity aspect. It is the only binding agreement that combines both these aspects. I'm not saying that UNCPT is not binding. That is also binding. This is binding, and it is the only agreement which combines both climate change and biodiversity. And on that day, I also clarified the irony. UNFCCC is not binding, this is binding. That deals with climate change. This deals with climate change and biodiversity. Okay, that contradiction shows the inconsistency in our governance approach to deal with the climate problem. And one more thing, the concept here that we are discussing is land degradation. What do you mean by land degradation? Here in this context, you should know the difference between desertification and sandification. Usually in dry areas, even when there is less moisture in the soil, they will still have some fertility. Degradation refers to a phenomenon where life form support is literally dead in that land. No amount of nutrients or any amount of fertility possibility is there, that is gone. Okay, that is the phenomenon of desertification, which is a multifaceted systemic problem. It is not a physical problem alone. Whereas if you take a look at this phenomenon of sandification, it is a specific case of land degradation where maybe the direction of degradation is signified here. Let's say, for example, previously, if there is 100% productivity, if we are saying that the land is getting degraded, it means now we are at 70%. Just like how your phones at the time of manufacturing will have 100% battery life. Over a period, the battery life gets degraded, right? So the degradation is a sign of the direction. It doesn't mean always 0%. Okay? Degradation indicates a direction. Similarly, when we are talking about ocean acidification, I'm just pointing it out. Ocean acidification means from the alkaline side. If you take a look at the pH cycle, 7 being neutral, if it is this side, it is alkaline. If it is this side, it is. So when we are saying ocean acidification, let's say if the pH is somewhere around 9 in the oceans, let's say for example, the pH levels of that ocean is 9. When I say ocean acidification is happening, it doesn't mean that we fell below 7 and now it is like acid. It is not turning into hydrochloric acid or the powerful acid that you will see. No, that is not the case. We are just indicating the direction. Similarly, in land degradation also, we are indicating a direction. Okay? Now, in the case of sandification, it is a phenomenon where because of various physical agents, the rocks get degraded and turn into sand. And they get transported because of wind and get deposited over maybe fertile soils. So the fertile soil above which this sand gets settled, that is still having fertility. But because of the sandification process, practically speaking, they will become infertile. So there is a need for you to differentiate between land degradation and sandification. Clear? That is one more caveat that you need to remember. Moving forward, Montreal Protocol. What is the purpose of this? It's a quick recap. It's a universally ratified protocol where all the countries came together to fill that gaping hole near the poles. The ozone layer, which was supposed to protect us from harmful sun rays, harmful part of the spectrum of sun rays, energy, solar energy that comes onto the earth, that layer is getting degraded. In fact, there was a hole. So the Montreal Protocol was supposed to address this issue. It's more or less considered one of the largest diplomatic victories in the discussion on climate change or any environment issue. Because a lot of people came together. The reason for the success is very simple. We had a technological alternative. The industry moved very quickly from these ozone depleting substances. But the problem was, in the transition, we also started creating more greenhouse gases, which led to the Kigali Amendment in 2016, which are the greenhouse gases. See, ozone is a different problem. Greenhouse gas is a cumulative warming of the climate. So when we moved from one technology to another, we solved a bigger problem, but also as a trade-off created a new problem where the HFCs, they turned out to be the greenhouse gases and they warm the climate. So these are all part of your static classes, but I'm just quickly revising everything so that the connect of the theme doesn't feel broken down. If you are feeling that the pace is a bit quick, it is intentional. This is not a static class, supposed to be a current affairs class, but I don't want to cut down static part and dynamic part. So I hope you understand why the pace is quick. Now, similarly for pollution, even for pollution, we require some protocols, conventions, etc. Right? So to handle different kinds of pollutants, what do you mean by pollution? Simply put, it is the presence of some particle in an ecosystem which is considered to be not desirable. In that ecosystem, let's say, for example, consider ozone. If the same ozone is up there in the sky, it's protecting us. But if it is on the ground level, it's considered a pollutant. So pollution means any substance should just be placed where it deserves to be. If you are putting something in an alien environment where it doesn't belong, it is a pollutant. Let's say, for example, a soil particle is not a pollutant when it is on the ground, but when it enters our food, it becomes a pollution. pollutant. So it is about location as well as quantity. Okay, pollutants are harmful to human beings, and that's the reason we started really thinking about them. Okay, what are the different kinds of pollutants? Solid, liquid, and gaseous states. Okay, out of all those chemicals, all those pollutants, the most important ones, again, which are related to our economic activities, persistent organic pollutants. For example, let's say you take up any pollutant which is going to stay in our ecosystem for a very long time. What do you mean by persistent? They have a very long duration. They stay in that environment for a very long time. And when they stay where they are not supposed to stay, what will they become? Pollutant. So we need a governance architecture to deal with that. Similarly, in the case of mercury, it is an important, sometimes a byproduct or an undesirable element in our food ecosystem. For example, if it is found in fish, if it is consumed by human beings, it is a problem. So in all these cases, we came up with some different kinds of conventions, namely Basel, Stockholm, Minamata. So the corresponding static part, please go back and revise. Take a look at this question, previous year question. Read the question carefully. You don't have to know anything. Okay? Just environmental questions are like that. If you pay attention, you will be able to come up with a logical guess. Most of the environment questions can be cracked like that. Take a look at this. Which of the following organizations served as the parent body for invasive alien species specialist group in 2023, supporting global norms such as UNCBD? So it has got something to do with biodiversity. Let's take a look at the options. IUCN, maybe, we don't know. UNEP. What did we say about UNEP? It's a supporting organization. Okay, might be. UN World Commission for Environment and Development. How likely is it? No. The World Wildlife Fund for Nature. When I say fund, what is it about? Maybe finance. We don't know. Let's imagine it is finance. So out of all of this, take a look at the question. Served as the parent body for invasive species specialist group. So if you know the basics of invasive species, what does it tell you? They are a threat to biodiversity, and the main body that deals with understanding the impact of some species like this on our biodiversity, the main job is taken up by IUCN. You know this. So by that, you will mark this. You take an educated guess. Now, if you are in your school, unless and until you know what the specialist group is, or unless and until you read in some magazine this fact, you wouldn't be attempting this. Some freshers, they overthink. Let's say they mugged up every piece of current affairs out there, but when they are seated in that exam hall, they'll start wondering, is this in 2023 or 22, 21, or is it 2013? Maybe I'm forgetting the fact. So let's not attempt this question. Or this is one way of overthinking. The other way of overthinking is, let's say UNEP, they vaguely remember because they sat in a class like mine, or while they're having their dinner or lunch, they sit with a YouTube video, which is a marathon video, and they consume as if it is a Family Man show or something. What happens then? They remember that UNEP is a body that helps in scientific support. This looks like something scientific only, no? So let's mark UNEP. Even if that is the answer, let's say, it is only an element of luck. But every senior aspirant, traditionally, how will they approach this? through the logic of what IUCN does only. They will not go into the facts because there is a limit to how much our mind can absorb information, and I want you to respect that limit if you want to clear this exam. Clear? I just showed you one example there. Now let's take a look at this question. At the 28th COP28, India refrained from signing a declaration on climate and health. Let's say you did not read anything. How will you approach? What is the keyword in the first statement? Sorry? Okay. Refrained is one keyword. Next. Climate and health. Okay. Let's move on from that statement. COP28 declaration is a binding declaration, and if signed, it becomes mandatory to decarbonize the health sector. Okay. We don't know. Let us imagine it is true or false, whatever. If health sector is decarbonized, the resilience of its healthcare system may be compromised. We don't know the official key yet, but let's go use our logic. What is logic? Is it 100% cause effect link or a possibility? If you want me to rephrase the question, what does logic mean? It is just like Newton's third law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. It is a universal law. It cannot be violated as long as we are in the realm of earth. As far as we know, it is a law that is obeyed universally. Now, if you move away from logic, another thing is possibility. Possibility means asking questions like, do aliens exist? Can you say for sure? Maybe, maybe not. So, should you base your answers on possibility or logic? Logic, right? Now, let's go back to the statements. Take a look at this. If you make that declaration, you have to consider that it is a binding declaration, and if signed, it becomes mandatory to decarbonize the health sector. Maybe that's why we are not signing it. Okay, let's imagine. If health sector is decarbonized, the resilience of its healthcare system may be compromised. Is there a 100% possibility for this? It's possible that, but is it true always? No. So I can safely say this is wrong, right? At least one statement is wrong, you can safely say. Take a look at this. Both statement 2 and 3 are correct. I will eliminate this. Both statement 2 and 3 are correct. Again, I will eliminate this. Only one of the statements 2 and 3 is correct, and that explains statement 1. Okay, let's imagine this is correct. Okay. If India's, okay, this is wrong. So let's imagine this is correct. Second statement. Binding declaration. Legally speaking, a declaration can be binding. But if you go back and look at the nomenclature of environmental governance, conventions are binding, agreements are binding, declarations are not. They're just directional in nature. So why will they use this kind of different nomenclature? Okay. It becomes mandatory to decarbonize the health sector. When will a declaration become mandatory? For example, take a look at previous declarations. Reporting can be mandated. How can you say that we have to decarbonize health sector uniformly for all the countries? It's not that easy. right? So any senior should logically approach it in this way rather than chasing facts. Because practically speaking, you are not going to download all those climate negotiations and go into the details. So I would go with neither 2 nor 3 is correct. Okay. So this is one way of approaching through our understanding at this point of time. Did I use any concepts here? Just the legal language. So semantics or the words, English, how UPSC uses English to confuse the aspirants is the takeaway here. And yeah, there is a possibility of it not being true also, right? That's what I'm saying. Logic is not based on possibility. Can you say that it is 100% true all the time? See, this is my interpretation. Logical, because in UPSC, logic is 100% possibility. It's a debatable topic. That's the reason I said key is not released. If I were in the exam, I would be approaching it like this. So let's see. Logically, I think answer should be D. I understand if health sector is decarbonized, the resilience of its healthcare system may be compromised. What is the guarantee? I mean, what makes you believe that this is possible? I can say may not be compromised also. And that statement is also equally true. Is this about, CSAT, necessary and sufficient conditions, or GS1, environment logic? We are using that CSAT logic here, but this is GS1. So what would you pick when you are in the exam hall? So let's see. That's what I'm saying. Like, we will see how UPSC will give the key. But if I were taking this, I would be looking at it this way. But if UPSC is applying that CSAT logic, maybe we will have to adapt to that, and going forward, ignore the subject and look at the semantics. So that is my way of approaching things. So maybe this, for example, if you go by the, so only one of the statements of 2 and 3 is correct. If you assume that 2 is wrong and 3 is correct, then maybe it will be right. So a lot of people are debating between C and D. My point exactly. That's the reason I'm going for 4. But people want to use this as the reason for India, but that is not true. If you go back and verify the official statement, that is not true. In the event of you not knowing that news, how will you approach is the premise of our discussion here. Yeah, absolutely. That is the demand of the question. Now, we moved from pollution, UNFCCC, which is about our atmosphere. Then we talked about biodiversity. Then we were talking about land. But the often ignored theme is that of oceans. Ocean governance architecture. This, according to me, is the next big theme. Definitely either in GS1 as a geography question, GS3 as an environmental question, or maybe in the prelims exam, you might get a question definitely somewhere. Or at least a part of this can be used in your answers in mains. Therefore, please pay attention. Can you tell me why oceans are so important? Biggest concern, why? One second. There is one PYQ. I don't know if I added it here. No, I forgot, I guess. There is one question actually. In 2025 only there was this question. Oceans have more oxygen than something like that. There was some question. So, comparison between other ecosystems, maybe in 2025 only, right? There was one question. Okay. See, basically the context is, let's forget the details also. The context that I wanted to establish is using that question. Let me check that question once. Yeah, take a look at this question. Rainforests produce more oxygen than produced by oceans. Marine phytoplankton and photosynthetic bacteria produce more than 50% of world oxygen. Well oxygenated surface water contains several folds higher oxygen than in atmospheric air. Some random facts, let's say for example. You don't know this. Simple thing that we have to focus on. Why is ocean a point of discussion now? Because historically we haven't given oceans so much importance because we hardly understood the multifaceted impact if oceans get destroyed. If our marine resources are destroyed, our circulation system or monsoon, everything will get impacted. Basically, in a systemic approach, if a small component is disturbed, every other aspect is also impacted. Let's say, for example, if oceans are getting warm, it will impact our monsoons. It will impact the severity of monsoons. Also, when cyclones happen, that will also have a devastating impact, extreme climatic events. So you can't exactly predict how malfunctioning of oceans as a system can impact our life. And this lack of awareness is a big concern because neither do we have a clear-cut understanding of ocean's behavior, and because of that we don't have a proper architecture, governance architecture to deal with this, and that is a very serious concern. So scientists moved away from looking at oceans just as a repository of all these resources to looking at them as ecosystem that need to be conserved. So from a business logic to conservation logic, this is the transition that we are witnessing in the theme of ocean governance. What do I mean by this resource logic? Historically, if you look at oceans, the governing law is UNCLOS. So the main agenda behind UNCLOS was predominantly political in nature. We were just demarcating the oceans to see which country can utilize the ocean bed and to what extent. For example, you see the South China Sea controversy. China is fighting with many countries in that region. What is the basis of that fight? This law. It's basically control over resources. We want wealth, but we are not taking responsibility. And this needs to change. In the present world, when we are discussing about the theme of blue economy, this conservation aspect needs to be realized. Otherwise, what will happen? When you want, let's say for example, take the state of Andhra Pradesh itself. Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Odisha, or all the East Coast states. They want to leverage the resources, whether in terms of the polymetallic nodules or fisheries, all the marine resources. They want to leverage that. But if they are not participating in the conservation of it, their economy will also get destroyed, right? So conservation cannot be ignored in blue economy. This realization dawned upon us, and that's why this is now a predominant theme. Clear? So if I were to logically extend this governance architecture, environmental governance architecture as a theme, we discussed enough about forests, land, atmosphere, biodiversity, everything is done. The next logical theme, if you take a look at the data and the direction of how UPSC is moving, I would say it is oceans. Lot of discussions on oceans are happening. So let's understand oceans a bit more than what we know right now. But today's class will be confined only to the governance architecture of looking at oceans. And when we are doing this, it is best to first cover whatever is discussed in the previous year question themes. So I'm beginning with UNCLOS. Okay, that is the logic here. Take a look at this. Basically, what is this? Let me use this diagram here. Let's take this as a baseline. Baseline is the point of reference. See, this is land. This is the towards the sea. This is towards the land. This baseline to the left is land, to the right is the ocean. Clear? Now don't ask me why they fixated on this number. There must be some logic, but I don't know. I don't want to know also. Okay? So internal waters and everything beyond that. When you take this baseline, basic funda that you need to know is territorial zone, contiguous zone and exclusive economic zone from baseline. It is not from territorial sea. Please understand that. There are three categories. You don't have to know why 12 nautical miles, but there is a logic behind each of these categories. You don't have to remember the numbers and be curious about why only 12, why only 200. But you have to be curious about why UN class wanted three different categories. Can anyone tell me why? What is your logic? First of all, what is the significance of each of this? Okay. Why have a contiguous zone? Why not have territorial zone? Why not club it with territorial sea? There must be some logic, right? Do we have sovereignty? Let's say, does a country have sovereignty here? Does a country have sovereignty here? In contiguous zone? Yes or no? Just give me yes or no. No. Do we have sovereignty here? Yes, no. Do we have sovereignty in exclusive economic zone? Then why this word exclusive? What is sovereignty? What is the definition of sovereignty? There is no external control. You don't have any external control now in this zone. Then why is it not a sovereign zone? There is a reason why I'm asking this question. There is a recent controversy too. Yes, it overlaps, but why not make it in such a way that it doesn't overlap? Because it is in our hands only. International trade purpose. That is one logical answer. But what aspect of international trade? Exactly. Let's say there is a Chinese ship which is moving through the exclusive economic zone of this country. Then what happens if we stop that Chinese ship? There will be a very narrow lane through which ships will pass. And you might witness traffic jam in high seas. You don't want that scenario. Or if the seas are very much constrained, it will create multiple choke points. What do you mean by choke points? For example, remember that Suez Canal issue. A ship got stuck between two banks and international trade was disturbed for almost 10 days. Immediately the prices shot up. This kind of scenarios should not happen. And for that reason, freedom of navigation is a concept which is important, and that's why we have exclusive economic zones. Then why do we have contiguous zones? Let's say, you remember this recent case where Shah Rukh Khan's son was caught in some controversy on some drugs issue. He had some alleged possession of some narcotic substance, and he was caught on a cruise, if I'm not wrong, or I don't know. I think it was a cruise. Where do we have sovereignty? Till here. Now what if I decide to conduct a rave party here? I will park my ship here. 12.1 nautical mile. It is not in India. Coast Guard can't reach. Navy's laws are ending there. Now what? So, if you say that I will extend the patrolling till here, it is not easy. It is impractical to conduct patrolling till 24 nautical miles. It is too expensive to do that, and it is inefficient too. But if you get some information that it is happening, people won't do it. So when you come into the high seas, ocean is not going to be calm and stable. Here the continental shelf is pretty much shallow, so you won't have so much disturbance there. You can do this kind of activities here, but if you go too much deep, there is turbulence. Ocean waters are not so easy to navigate, and it is unlikely that this kind of activities will happen. So if there is any violation of national laws, you need to have a zone practical enough that we can extend our compliance measures. Let's say our law enforcement agencies should be able to access that region and exercise the compliance of a national law. And that is exactly what happened there. So smuggling kind of activities, etc., they can still enforce in the contiguous zone. Beyond this zone, why only beyond this zone? It must have something to do with the practicalities which we don't have to go into. But for all practical purposes, let's understand that they were wise enough to understand it is not necessary beyond this zone. They realized that it is safe enough to put it till this point. That's why we have a contiguous zone for enforcement of our law. We don't have sovereignty completely. If some illegal activity happens there, we can enforce our law there, but we can't say this is mine, you can't pass through this. That is the difference between a territorial sea and a contiguous zone. Exclusive economic zone is meant for ocean bed resources at the bottom. So you don't want China to enter into deep sea and come mining here just beside your territorial sea. You would want to avoid all that kind of economic exploitation. Therefore, exclusive economic zone is there. This is the commercial logic of UNCLOS, and anything beyond that is high seas, a territory that no country cared for. Here is where oil spills happen. Here is where all the plastic junk gets accumulated because they gets washed away over a period of time. They are on high seas. Who will clean that mess? In the Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, you see gyres or gyres as they are called. Plastic waste is circulated in circles because of the ocean circulation. And sometimes often it is considered that they impact the ocean current circulation also. That is one physical problem. Take a look at the biological impact on the marine kingdom in the ocean region. The animals and the plants that stay in that ecosystem, they are also harmed. Nobody was taking responsibility of this, and that is the context of our BBNJ treaty. Look at the word treaty. It is not declaration. Clear? So, high seas, 64% of the world's ocean and 45% of the Earth's surface. You can understand the magnitude of what we are trying to regulate. Okay, that is what I wanted to show here. Now, we are explaining the logic behind every zone that we already discussed. Each zone exists because of a specific functional need. Territorial sea is for sovereignty, contiguous zone is for law enforcement, and exclusive economic zone is for resource management. The classification is trying to solve one problem. You won't find this in any textbook. But if you remember this principle, if you are curious enough to find out and go search for the official documents, the discussions therein, you will find this answer. Okay? Please note this down. All right. Okay. So if you have to understand some key words, common heritage principle. Seabed beyond national jurisdiction is equal to common heritage of mankind. This is recognized by UN clause, but did it enforce any conservation there? Anything that is there on high seas is important for everyone. You have a concept called global commons. Space, Antarctica, high seas, where every country should have responsibility but not sovereignty. No country will have sovereignty. Is Arctic Circle a global common? No, it is not. Please remember that. We have 8 countries in the Arctic Circle trying to capture the resources there. Clear? That is the difference between Antarctica and Arctic Circle. And here UN clause recognizes that seabed beyond national jurisdiction. We're not talking about sea water, seabed. Please be very clear. Okay? So the problem here is that, again, it is in favor of rich nations. The needs of the small island states were never recognized because they have very small, tiny fragments, and those rights is not just about economic exploitation, it's also about their existence. Like there are many other needs which we will talk in a separate lecture now. So India wants to align with that because it will give us bargaining power. It will give us the position of being a global authority. Let's say when you want to negotiate on a global platform like UNSC, these countries will help in putting forward our agenda. So that's the aim here. Now, recently in the COP30 summit, we had a current affairs theme with respect to oceans. That is One Ocean Partnership, which is meant for, mobilizing money. It is about the financing part. Okay. So if you take a look at the prelims logic, how it can be used. in the present scheme of things, UPSC might link climate, oceans, and finance. The 5 steps that we spoke about in the beginning of the lecture, it can combine 3 of them, because oceans are no longer treated just as a resource. They're also treated as something that needs to be conserved. This is not our, this is not just a principle recognized by UN, it is also there inherently even in our strategy documents by MEA. Sagar, security and growth for all in the region. In that document, you will see the recognition for protecting oceans. So inherently that principle is embedded. Clear? See, UPSC has a tendency of asking some random organizations. So I picked it up from newspaper articles and respective websites. Blue Economy and Finance Forum, Finance in Common Ocean Coalition, Development Bank of Latin America. In fact, if I'm not wrong, even today's Hindu editorial has a discussion on this ocean architecture. Please go back and read that once. So these respective forums are basically talking about finance. That's all you need to know. Don't get into the depth of it. Now the discussion in climate talks is about money. All this is fine. Where am I going to get money from? All the nations are only bothered about who will finance, how much will they give. Clear? See, we saw that aspect of Sagar where our own ministry treats conservation not as a economic imperative but also as a security imperative, because if the economy, or the rather I would say the ecosystem itself collapses, economy will collapse. If economy collapses, it becomes a security issue, because they will be forced to migrate out of that region. So environment, economy, security. That is the logic why these 3 subjects are there in GS3. Clear? So that is there in the Sagar initiative. Coming to the BBNJ. We signed this treaty in 2024, but we are yet to ratify. Recently, there is a news. Ministry of Earth Sciences is constituting a 12-member panel. So it basically is signifying that we are ready to enter into that agreement phase. Why are we not committing now? Because if you are committing, you will have to amend the Biodiversity Act. And after amending that Biodiversity Act, you are going to create marine protected areas. Just like national parks, even in high seas, you will have to carry forward that obligation. And remember that MPAs under BBNJ neither grant national jurisdiction nor extend exclusive economic zones. It is not about economy. It is not about sovereignty. So don't bring that UNCLOS logic here. This is about high seas. Their agenda is different. These people's agenda is different. UPSC expects you to know this context. The shift from economy to environment. Okay? Now, regulation of marine genetic resources. Read this. In this pillar of the negotiation of the agreement, basically there are 4 pillars. 1, 2, 3, 4. Marine protected areas, genetic resources, environmental impact assessment, capacity building. This pillar covers marine genetic resources found beyond national jurisdiction, fair and equitable access sharing to address equity. Where do you find this? Nagoya Protocol. Now tell me, is this BBNJ agreement related to UNCBD or UNCLOS? This agreement is signed under Which architecture? Is it the UNCBD architecture or UNCLOS architecture? Take this as a homework. Go back and search. Now, environmental impact assessment, it's not just confined to one country. Let's say there is no blame game involved here. When we're talking about high seas, it is a responsibility of every country. So if a country is identifying some environmental impact, it creates a global level obligation, or at least in that region, the regional players should come into the picture. Clear? So we need to figure out a mechanism where across the world, let's say for example, on paper at least, if there is a war that is coming, breaking out in a region, global body, UN needs to respond. Similarly, if there is an event like oil spill, some body created by this architecture should become the nodal point of contact to address that issue. Do we have any such body now that deals exclusively with environmental degradation in high seas? No, that's the problem we are supposed to solve. Okay. Now, when it comes to capacity building, it's not unconditional. This point you need to remember. Its primary purpose is to ensure conservation efforts. So, for example, supports developing countries by facilitating access to marine science, data, and linking it to conservation obligation. Technology is often dual use. What do I mean by this dual use technologies? For example, if you take the case of nuclear physics as science, I can make a bomb or a reactor. So when I give you a technology, even that technology can have a dual impact. Let's say I give you a sonar or some kind of a radar. You can either use it for spying or for having a check on environmental condition of that region. I'm just giving you a rough example, not literally. So when I am transferring the technology to a developing nation, it is done with an intent to conserve, not to use it for any other purpose. So if UPSC gives that it is an unconditional transfer, no. It is conditioned on the premise that it is only meant for, okay? Try to answer this question now. The contiguous zone was created to address specific law enforcement concerns without extending full territorial sovereignty. True or false? Okay. So if I can eliminate one option, what will that be? Now, granting sovereignty in the contiguous zone would allow coastal states to regulate navigation and overflight. Yes or no? How many of you think it's yes? Let's say, okay, I'll make it Indian coastal states. Now, why? This is a multidisciplinary question. India is a union of states. When sovereignty is granted, it is only granted for the central government. State governments do not have any say on sovereignty issues. We are not a federation like, we are not a federal country. It's a quasi-federal country with a unitary bias. Okay? So states have responsibility in informing the center, in safeguarding the resources, safeguarding the law and order as a part of the union, not as a sovereign body. If that is the case, Tamil Nadu police will fight with Andhra Pradesh police, Odisha police, Bengal police, and it's not going to help our cause. Third point, exclusive economic zone. Now, by now you must have already understood the answer, but let's go to the third statement. Coastal states with authority primarily for economic exploitation rather than territorial control. Possible? Or you're applying the second statement logic only? Who is giving it? Center can give it to the states. Provides coastal states with authority primarily for economic exploitation rather than territorial control. Can you say it is wrong? You know this KG basin? Krishna Godavari basin. You find oil reserves there. Center will have the control. But if it wants to give, can it give to the states? So it's a possibility. If I use the word only, then wrong. So answer is 1 and 3. Understood? This is how you have to approach the subject for prelims. The topic of environmental governance, as far as current affairs is concerned, these are the most important themes. That's it for the day. We'll again meet in the next class. Okay. So this is a checklist of all the traps that you can avoid. All the things that we have discussed here, I just summed it up. Okay. That's it for the day. Thank you.